In the heat of the quarantine, I wanted to find a way to connect people to their musical heroes more intimately than ever before. So I sat at my turntables in my living room, and one at a time, I called my legendary friends and asked them to sing along as I dropped their iconic records. Yeah! Hey! Now, one artist had a sound man, a cameraman, or a lesson in virtual technology. Take the cable out of the Wi-Fi box and put it in your computer.
I'll put headphones on with the laptop.
All we had was each other, a couple laptops, the Zoom app, and a few other ingredients to my secret sauce.
I'm DMC, in the place to be. I go to St. John's University.
The press took notice.
Pass the Mic is the viral series you gotta see.
DJ Cassidy is rounding up hip-hop and R&B musical icons to perform their biggest hits in his viral series, Pass the Mic.
Never did I imagine that it would have such an emotional reaction. The show struck a nerve. It made people smile. It made people cry. It united families. It united friends. It uplifted people during hard times.
Hey, ho, hey, ho. To the end of the road.
After passing the mic to over 100 legendary artists in only 3 online episodes, BET asked me to produce a Pass the Mic primetime broadcast special, which aired in conjunction with the 2020 Soul Train Awards.
Oh, to the beat of the rhythm of the night, I dance until the morning light.
20 million digital views later, Pass the Mic received the greatest honor.
DJ Cassidy was back on the nation's biggest stage Wednesday, doing 2 segments of his viral series, Pass the Mic, at President Joe Biden's inauguration celebration.
I created this show, Pass the Mic, so the fans could feel their musical heroes like they have never in the past. And the Presidential Inaugural Committee wanted me to give that feeling on this really monumental day. We are going to be celebrating what makes this nation great, and to begin us coming together as a family, because at the end of the day, we are family.
We are family. It's just begun for me. Everybody sing.
Yeah, Cassidy, it is. It's an honor and a pleasure to welcome you to Halftime Chats. Your show has been probably a catalyst of how my channel has grown. So I'll talk a little bit about that. But you know, definitely we're looking forward to this next edition of Pass the Mic. But before we start, we've got an international audience. So people that tune in from the Caribbean, from the Far East, Africa, and Europe. So they always would like to know, where is Cassidy from, and just where he was raised, just so they can get a sense of your origins as we move forward.
Well, first of all, it's amazing to be here. I know you've been such a supporter of Pass the Mic from day one, and it's an honor to finally say hello to you in person, as opposed to simply on Instagram. I was born and raised in New York City, and I moved to Los Angeles about 5 years ago.
Wow. And
the home you see in Pass the Mic is my home in Los Angeles.
Okay. It isn't a proper, because, you know, I used to think it was a Beverly Hills hotel, because you seem to.
Well, I'm flattered. I love the Beverly Hills Hotel. If I could move to the Beverly Hills Hotel and film my show there, I would. But this is very much my living room. In fact, the background of Pass the Mic is actually right over here. Okay. So if you watch Pass the Mic, you see this couch on the left side, and then there's another one on the other side.
My goodness. But growing up from New York, and I guess because when I interviewed Elle last week, I was surprised that he was mixed race. Because I used to think he was Puerto Rican. A lot of people have said, you know, just your complexion. What is your sort of great heritage?
I'm white. I'm Jewish. My grandparents came from various countries in Western Europe. Okay. My grandparents escaped the Holocaust. They came here at the end of World War II, and they found themselves in New York City. where they had my parents and my parents had me. And I spent the majority of my life in New York City, never thought I would move. And as I mentioned, I moved to LA. I followed the palm trees.
It sounds very similar to Jimmy Iovine. He said the same thing, leaving New York to the California, not understanding the difference between the seasons and just sunshine continuously.
Yeah, I saw him say that as well. I think in Defiant Ones,
Defiant
right?
Ones, yeah.
Yeah, I never thought I would leave New York. I was a diehard New Yorker, but I started to come to LA as the music business, moved to LA, and I kind of never left.
Yeah. I lived briefly out in Redondo Beach and loved it there for.
Oh, I love it there.
Years. Yeah,
I love it there. Redondo, Hermosa, Manhattan Beach.
Yeah, you know them. Yeah.
Yep. I ride bikes there all the time on the boardwalk.
Oh goodness, yeah. Sharkies, the out in Hermosa. Yeah, we used to frequent there quite a bit. I saw a sort of a documentary on your YouTube channel when it talks about your early inspiration, where your parents bought you a turntable when you were 10 and stuff. But I was wondering how sort of soul music became something that you gravitated to. Was that stuff that your parents were listening to that you took an interest to, or was it family and friends?
It was actually none of the above.
Okay.
I credit hip hop with exposing me to everything else.
Yeah.
I was a very closed-minded kid. I only wanted to listen to hip hop. And when my parents bought me turntables for my 10th birthday, I only wanted to play hip hop. But I idolized Grandmaster Flash, Kool Herc, and Africa Bambaataa.
Wow.
They were my superheroes. And in idolizing them, I researched them and I began to learn how they created hip hop. And I learned that they created hip hop by playing all kinds of music. And through playing R&B and soul, funk, disco, and rock and roll and Caribbean music, and they formed a new kind of music by looking for the breakdowns in every song of all genres of music. And by giving a microphone to an MC to hype the crowd over these breakdowns, they created hip hop. That was very fascinating to me as a child. It still is extremely fascinating to me as an adult, how that took shape. And that opened up my mind. It expanded who I wanted to be, not only as a music lover, but specifically as a DJ. So I credit hip hop entirely with my love affair of the R&B music of the 70s and 80s. And although that music wasn't the first music I fell in love with, and although it wasn't the first music I played as a DJ, it became, in many senses, what I was known for playing, particularly in the celebrity circles.
Yeah, I mean, what made you different? Because I heard when you spoke about how Diddy got your number, put it on a sort of kitchen towel and stuff, and you've DJed for President Obama, Oprah. I mean, it was almost mind-boggling. But I wonder what made you and what you did differently that others recognized and said, "Wow, we need to get him on board."
Well, it's always been difficult for me to try to articulate exactly why others have been drawn to me. I can only try to guess.
Okay.
And one story that might pose an answer is the story when I met Puffy. I was 18 years old DJing at a club in New York, and it was a hot spot, but they kind of gave me like the whack room in the basement. And it was also pouring rain that night, so no one was in the club. But at 3 a.m, I saw Puffy come from the shadows, and he danced, as I remember, by himself until 5 a.m. and I was playing R&B classics of the 70s and 80s, funk, soul, disco, so on and so forth. So I was playing Michael and Prince and Stevie and Earth, Wind and Shaka, so on and so forth. And Puffy finally was walking out around 5 a.m. and walked by the DJ booth and said, "Where's the DJ?" Now, remember, when I was 18 years old, I looked like I was 8. And I said, "I'm the DJ." And he said, "Who's been here all night playing all these classic records?" And I said, "Me." And he wrote down his number and said, "Call me tomorrow." And I was a freshman at NYU, New York University, and I was petrified to call him. And I finally had the confidence to call, and it went straight to voicemail. It said, "God is the greatest, beep." And I never left such an inarticulate voicemail in my life. And I was certain he wouldn't call back, but I thought maybe I'd see him again. Anyway, I went to class and he called back. And now he missed me again. And when I left class again, I ran home to my mother's house, still lived with my mom, and locked myself in a room. And I said, "He called back." And I called him back, and they put him right on the phone. And he said, "Playboy," he said, "How do you know how to play those records like that?" And I said, "Like what?" And he goes, "Like you lived it."
Wow. And
I'll never forget that. So I don't know. That's the best way I can explain it. I don't know why or how I played those records that night in a way that impressed him. But I went on to DJ parties for him and continue to do to this day. To put it in perspective, that year, or should I say a few months after I met him, I DJ'd Puffy's 32nd birthday. And 2 years ago, I DJ'd his 50th birthday.
Wow.
And I went on shortly thereafter that to DJ for Jennifer Lopez and Naomi Campbell and Jay-Z and Beyonce. And then, of course, Oprah and Obama. And I do think there was a commonality in all these relationships. And although I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, I think all of these people I mentioned were drawn to me, perhaps for many ways, but for one way in particular that was common amongst everyone. I think they were drawn to me by how I played the R&B music of the 70s and 80s. So that could encompass anything under the R&B category, soul, funk, disco, so on and so forth. And I don't know how or why I became that person, or how or why I played that music in such a way that was attractive to people whom I admire. But I certainly fell in love with that music, and it came from hip hop. I do believe that that era of R&B music is the greatest dance music ever created. I've said that many times before. The R&B music of the late 1970s, early 1980s is the greatest dance music of all time. I believe it is the greatest party music of all time. Those records exude a spirit and a soul and an energy on the dance floor like no other. It really was the last era of dance music that was played by live musicians.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I think that has a very big part to do with that. I think that nothing moves the human body more than the human hand.
Yeah.
And when it's live musicians playing the dance music, it does create something special. And that era of music really is the sound of celebration. And I've always wanted to project that. I've always wanted to exude celebration. I believe when you come to a DJ Cassidy party, you are experiencing the sound of celebration and the spirit of celebration.
Wow. Yeah, no, you're right. And a lot of us have noticed the difference between sort of the way music is produced now electronically, and as opposed to using real session musicians in the studio creating sound and stuff. And that's why when we do go to a live concert, there's a very different feel to being with a concert with a band playing, as opposed to when we're just listening to it on the record. When you look through all of this, so you must have had really supportive family who said, wow, you know, you're going into this music stuff, you know, especially they got you the turntables. Or did you, I mean, how was that trying to navigate playing hip hop in a time when hip hop was almost regarded as a, you know, this is street music?
There was certainly a danger surrounding hip hop. In the early 90s, there was kind of an air of danger when people thought of concerts and when people thought of the parties and even when people thought of the music. I don't think when my parents bought me turntables and a mixer for my 10th birthday that any of us had any idea that DJing would become my career and the foundation of my identity. Wow. I credit my parents tremendously for buying me an unconventional gift, for allowing loud music at all hours of the night, wow, for allowing me to have CDs and records with the parental advisory sticker on the cover. And I credit my father for taking me to hip hop concerts when a lot of parents were scared to. Wow. You know, parents might take their kids to a concert or a sports game or something they want to go to, but I only wanted to go to hip hop concerts. That's all I ever asked to go to. I was never a sports fan, never cared about going to the Knicks game or the Yankees game or the Giants game, never cared about going to pop concerts. I really just wanted to go to hip hop shows. Wow. And so I have a lot to thank my parents for. The exposure to the concerts when I wanted to go, the explicit music, the loud music, and of course the turntables and mixer. Without all that, I don't know if I would be DJ Cassidy. I think the biggest lesson I learned, I'm not a parent, but maybe one day in the future I will be, is to simply encourage your child's passion, because you never know what it will become. Yeah. You know, I still worked hard in high school. I still went to college while I was DJing for Puffy and for Jennifer and for Jay and Beyoncé. All that started when I was in college. And there were moments in college where I still thought I would graduate and get a job at a record label or something like that. Okay. But once I graduated, it was crystal clear that I was a DJ and that was my profession. And I was already steps ahead of most kids graduating high school and college who had not yet found a calling. Yeah. And what a blessing it is to find a calling that you love, to be able to make $1 doing something you love. Yeah. Is a privilege that most people don't ever enjoy. And so every time I earn $1 playing records and making people dance, I'm extremely grateful. I'd be grateful for those opportunities if I didn't make $1. Yeah. But when I'm able to support myself and to call it a profession, it's even more of a blessing.
Yeah. You know what, how did you stay focused to graduate from college? Because if you were doing among celebrities, making some good money, a lot of people would just say, well, what's the point of finishing college?
There were moments where I said, what's the point of finishing college? Okay. There were definitely moments writing term papers at 4 a.m. I mean, I remember sometimes DJing the night before final exam, literally bringing the book to the club, you know, because back in those days, I wasn't a headlining DJ. I played the club from 10 p.m. to 4 in the morning. So from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m., there was a lot of downtime. I might have a book open over the mixer.
Wow.
And that was a real thing. What kept me going? I really couldn't begin to tell you. I think I had a certain sense of pride. Like I want to be able to say I did it. I wanted to be able to say I did it. And it does give me a little sense of pride that I did it.
Yeah.
Could I have left and accomplished everything I accomplished as a DJ? Quite possibly so. I'll never know. But I was a sociology major of all things. And sociology is really the study of people and study of human interactions and the study of how people move across the globe. And you know, perhaps some of that helped me in my ability to read a crowd. You know, DJing is a lot of people watching, right? Whether you're starting off the night at 10 p.m. or whether you're on stage in front of thousands of people or doing a little exclusive party in LA or New York, no matter what it is, you always have moments where you are people watching, studying what makes people tick, what makes people move.
Yeah.
I do believe DJing is all about emotion. It's about creating emotion. Songs make you feel aggressive, sexy, romantic, laid back, energetic, violent. Songs create emotions. And so DJs take you on this emotional journey. So perhaps my sociological studies influenced my DJing abilities in some way.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're totally right about that. And because there's a very difference when you have a DJ who's just playing the hits because you have got this exclusive hit, or somebody who brings a sound that you've not heard, but you feel as if you've known it before. In England, because I was born in England, but went to high school in Nigeria. They used to call it Ray Groove. So it is like the late 70s, mid 80s, where it's a jam that Ray you don't mix it with some Caribbean soul, but it's stuff that it wouldn't be popular, and so you just really vibe to it and stuff. And a DJ would see, okay, people are moving there, and then they bring in something else, and then they get something popular and stuff. Finding the music, that must be the hardest part, not just playing all the big hits, but playing stuff that people don't know but appreciate. How hard was that?
Well, as a young kid, discovering new music was the most exciting experience because so much of what I heard was new. I would be in a clothing store and hear a record. I would be at a nightclub and hear 100 records I didn't know. I'd be at, an industry party and hear another 100 records I didn't know. I'd be watching TV and hear a song in a commercial. When you're young and you know so little, everything feels new. And I absorbed everything. A lot of my early research was me going to clubs in my late teens, early 20s, listening to other DJs. I would come home late at night. My mom would have an eye open, scream my name, Cass, is that you? Are you home? And she would say, where were you? And I would name 3 clubs. And she would say, who did you go with? And I would say, alone. I would go out to these clubs alone to study. And this was really before smartphones. So, I might have had a cell phone, but you couldn't really type on it. I would literally bring a little notebook and a pen to write down song titles. Or if I didn't know a song title, I would listen for the chorus and write down a lyric and then go home and have to figure out what that song was.
Wow.
Some of this was even before the internet, although most of it I had the internet and you could Google it. But this was even before Googling was, something we did 100 times a day. So really, I'd wake up the next morning and call people. I'd call an older person than myself and say, what's this song? And I would start singing the line or reading the lyric that I wrote down. Sometimes I would be in a club and I would go to a payphone, if I didn't have a cell phone at that point, and sing the chorus that I had just heard into my home answering machine.
Wow.
So that the next day I would have a record of the songs I wanted to learn. Now, of course, you Shazam it. It's easier now. It's still a fun process, but that, you know, those experiences, you can never relive those. You know, your first experiences are always the most exciting. They will never be topped.
Yeah.
Puffy seeing me at a club and giving me his number and telling me to call him. It doesn't matter how exciting a party is. He could throw the greatest party on earth. It will never beat that moment. You know, being discovered is a moment. No matter how exciting Past the Mic gets, it will never feel like the night Volume 1 aired. It will never feel like that again. And that's a good thing. That's a beautiful thing. The night that Past the Mic Volume 1 aired, I went to sleep feeling like I had stumbled upon something so special. And I was so nervous because I didn't know what to do with Volume 1. I sat on it for a minute. I didn't know where to air it. I thought no one would watch, and I didn't know what to do with it. And then that night I went to bed feeling like, wow, this was discovered and people reacted. So the firsts are always the most exciting.
Yeah. You know, I mean, you brought up Volume 1 and during the, I do want to go back to your record career. But before we do that, but you brought up Volume 1 and, you know, globally we were all shut down. You know, people didn't know what to do. I started doing this because I'm a therapist. So I'm you know, and I work with under 21s. I work with kids from 5 to under 21s. And so to me, I was doing this just to hear an inspirational story so I can share with the kids I'm working with. But for you, what was, you know, I've heard the story about, you know, what was your inspiration to think, you know, let me call my friends and contacts to record something that hadn't been done. So there was no blueprint.
Well, I can tell you exactly how it happened. It was April 2020, and I was sitting on my couch right over there, which you don't see in the show. That's where the camera is. And I was FaceTiming with my friend and mentor, Verdine White of Earth, Wind & Fire.
Wow.
And Verdine was sitting on his couch, and we were both wearing fancy pajamas.
Yeah, the so blue one.
And while I'm FaceTiming with my legendary friend, his legendary song, That's the Way of the World, comes on my speakers in the background, very low. And Verdine hears it and starts to sing along like, oh, it's my song. Hearts of fire, create love, desire. And I got such chills down my spine. First of all, that song gives me chills in and of itself. But now I'm sitting here with the world in flux. And I'm FaceTiming with one of my heroes, really like a founding member of the greatest R&B band of all time.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just singing along to his song. And I said, how beautiful is this moment, and how privileged am I to have relationships with so many of my musical heroes, and how privileged am I to experience moments like this? And then I said to myself, maybe there's a way for me to recreate this feeling for others and give this feeling that I have right now to other people around the world, particularly at such a crazy time.
Yeah.
And I immediately had the idea. I immediately thought of Past the Mic. I thought of the phrase Past the Mic, and I envisioned it. I envisioned me sitting right over there.
Wow.
With the fireplace behind me, which is right over there.
Yeah.
And I envisioned me dropping iconic records, but bringing on the artists who sing those songs to sing along. And I envisioned it right away how you see it. I envisioned the pace being rapid fire.
Yeah.
No one would ever sing a second verse. All the viewers would want more. No one would ever want less.
Wow.
It would be the greatest sing-along jam session ever. And it would be technologically innovative and groundbreaking. And it would present these iconic songs in a way like never before. In a more intimate way than ever before, in a more personal way than ever before, and in a way that allows for modern day attention spans.
Yeah.
As we know, with modern technology and social media, people have no attention spans. Now, DJs have always been conducive to low attention spans because we've always loved playing records fast.
Yeah.
And, you know, Kid Capri was always known most for that. Rapid fire songs. Drop a record, drop a record, drop a record. Kid Capri was and is the king of that. And I didn't quite think of it as deliberately as I'm articulating it now. But what developed was a presentation of iconic records in a very modern way. And I didn't think about that all on the phone call with Nadine, but I saw what it would be on that phone call. And I hung up with him. I said, I got to call you back. I have an idea. I love you. I'll call you tomorrow. And I called an editor that I work with frequently, Ian Park. He's a brilliant editor, and he's edited many of my music videos and reels over the years. And I told him about this idea. And I said, we got to figure out a way to do this. This show was never a Zoom show. Everyone thought, oh, you just record the Zoom. and how is everything in sync?
Yeah.
It was never that simple. And I've never explained it publicly. And I might never explain it publicly. But it was never that simple. It became simpler when I started to make it for television. But the first 3 episodes were not quite so simple. And I had to think of how to explain this to artists so that they could do this on their own, with me, of course, but with no one else. And I had to not only explain it to artists who might not be technologically savvy, because many of us are not, but I had to explain it to a lot of older artists who didn't grow up with laptops and iPhones. And that was the real, that was the first hurdle to cross. Once we crossed that, I now had to convince 20 or so icons to take a leap of faith on a crazy idea. There was no prototype. Yeah. I had to call back Verdine. Then I had to call Philip Bailey and Ray Parker Jr. and Denise Williams and Saida Garrett and Howard Hewitt and Bobby Brown and Ricky Bell and Steve Arrington and Cool from Kool and the Gang and Khalees from Kool and the Gang, who has since passed. And that was the last thing he ever did, which is a whole other conversation. And I had to convince these people to trust me. And the only way I could explain why they trusted me is that I only called people whom I already knew, because I knew it would require trust. Yeah. So I called my most legendary friends, and somehow, some way, they obliged.
Yeah, as much as I'm a big fan of Pastor Mike 3 because of the 90s acts, the vibe of the first one is probably because some of them were playing live. It just felt soothing. It just felt like, because I don't know if you ever watched The Real World back on MTV, and the one they did in New York, no one knew what to expect, and then I think LA was the same, but later on everyone knew what to expect, so it felt more staged. But the first 2 are the ones where they didn't know what to look at. And so that's how it felt like, okay, we're just doing it and we're having fun. The idea of wearing the silk pajamas, was that something that you that you look back on and think, yeah, maybe I should have not?
First of all, I love you for asking that question. I know you've really been a fan of the show, and it's great when you have the opportunity to do an interview with someone who's a real fan of the show, not someone who who the producer said you're interviewing DJ Cassidy today, because you always get really smart questions. I've never been asked this. So firstly, the pajamas were inspired by the FaceTime call with Verdine. Yeah, okay. He and I were wearing these kind of fancy pajamas or, kind of fancy loungewear. And it was secondly inspired by the pandemic. Everyone was kind of locked indoors. Oh. And so I wanted this to be like a stamp in time, where you could really feel the moment. Yeah. And, girls were posting, when was the last time I wore my heels? Like no one was wearing real clothes. Yeah, yeah. I hadn't put on my boater hat in a while. So I liked the idea that I got from the FaceTime of representing the pandemic. Yeah. And then, of course, I just thought, what better way to be DJ Cassidy Fly than black silk pajamas? One of my best friends, O'Neal McKnight, who's a Renaissance man, recording artist,
and is Andre's nephew?
Producer, Andre Harrell's cousin, correct?
Cousin, yeah.
I had sent O'Neal the first few clips, and he called me back and he goes, "This is amazing." He goes, "You need to redo your parts though and change your clothes. You can't wear black silk pajamas." And I stood my ground. You know, O'Neal is always the source of inspiration to me. He's been a huge source of inspiration when it comes to fashion, but I had to hold my ground. I felt like it was just, you know, a great representation of the time.
Yeah.
Also, one other thing I'm not sure you noticed, I didn't wear sunglasses.
I was going to say that. I was going to say that. Yeah, you didn't wear the glasses, and yeah, you look different.
I could tell you why. In the same spirit of the pajamas, I really wanted to relay a feeling that was personal and intimate, and wearing my signature shades didn't feel like I was home in my living room. You know, wearing my boater hat barely felt like I was home in my living room. So I said, all right, I'll wear that signature, but maybe I'll lose the glasses. I also wanted to connect with the artist as personally as possible. And I thought if I could look into their eyes, it would feel personal.
Yeah.
I don't regret the pajamas. I love it. It's really a time capsule.
Yeah.
It was still me. It was still fly.
Yeah.
I don't regret not wearing sunglasses. I wanted people to really feel my sincerity and my emotion.
Yeah.
But then on volume 3, I was like, all right, it's showtime again. I'm like, all right, this is popping off. Yeah. All right, I gotta go into full DJ Cassidy mode. I got a blazer custom made for that one. The first 2, I just pulled out what was in the closet, and you know, the rest is history. I realized it was time to bring the stage to the living room at that point.
Yeah, no, but with volume 1, I think it was perfect. I think the pajamas worked. I think everything and the setting. I mean, Ray Parlour Jr., you know, with his cigar, and it just felt relaxed. And I think that's and I would hope it will get back to that sort of state, that sort of feel, because I know you're doing stuff with BT and it's a bigger production and stuff. But that's why those first ones just felt like everyone was just in there. And it's a different time. I also have to remember people are no longer stuck at home. So the vibes changed. But that's probably why we loved those first ones, because it just felt like, it just felt real. It didn't feel as staged, even though it's pre-recorded and stuff.
There's nothing like a first.
Yeah.
There's nothing like a first. You know, I think we talked about that earlier. There's nothing like a first. You know, no matter how great Nas continues to be, you can never recapture Illmatic. That was written in his mother's apartment, I believe, where he grew up in Queensbridge. You can't recreate that energy. You can't recreate the beginning of a pandemic, you know, when neither the artist nor I had any idea what we were doing. I watched those early episodes and I almost cringe sometimes because, but you know, in a fun way. But
okay,
you know, I left so many holes between lines of records. I would never leave those holes now. Now the ad libs are perfectly executed.
Okay.
I think of everything before, you know, it's all freestyled in the end, but I have a game plan in my mind. Those first few episodes, there was zero plan. There was zero script. There were zero redos. It was really as organic and freestyled as it could get. The only real work that went into it was the editing.
Yeah.
But the actual segments were so organic.
Wow.
And look, when I watch volume 1 now, I'm being very real. I don't think, and I don't watch it often.
Okay.
I don't think I've watched any of these episodes in their entirety in months and months and months. I've watched clips because I have a sizzle reel that shows them all, but I haven't watched full episodes in a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a plan about that. I'm going to tell you. Actually, I think you're going to be the first person I tell, but if I watch volume 1, I will cry, period.
Wow.
I will cry watching it. it just brings me, I don't even want to put the focus on the pandemic. We all have our own pandemic memories, some good, some some bad. It's not even about the pandemic. It just brings me back to this time almost 2 years ago of just having an idea and creating something and receiving the faith and trust of people whom I revere. And when those first piano licks come in on That's the Way of the World, that first 60 seconds, I get chills. I really get chills. And I will forever be indebted to Verdine and Philip for what they did.
Yeah.
You know, they've been there for me now, you know, more than a handful of times in my career. They've played on records of mine. They've come to events of mine. You know, I'm really not worthy of the support they've given me, but, you know, I guess now it's not support, it's friendship. You know, we've really become friends. But for Verdine and Philip to take a leap of faith and do my silly idea, you know, of which we had no idea what would become of it, was really an incredible thing, which, you know, I will never forget.
Yeah, because what you did is you exposed them to a generation who had lost touch with the 70s and 80s and probably didn't, you know, weren't exposed much because with BET, we're not getting the videos and we're not seeing them. And so that's what you were able to do. A whole generation, wow, I didn't realize about this song. Oh, I didn't realize this person did that. And that's the one of the legacies I can see from what that is from Pastor Mike, because it did get generations of people who didn't know fall in love with a genre of music that only a select people were still able to access and enjoy.
And at the same time, I'm going to flip this on you. I think it exposed older people who were fans, say, of Volume 1 and the Soul Train edition to hip hop. You know, the Pass the Mic show that aired after the BET Awards in June was a show celebrating the greatest hip hop and R&B and reggae records, of which there were several, of the 2000s.
Yeah.
That show spanned from 2000 to 2009. Those are very recent records, and those artists are still very young. And I think in the same way that I exposed teenagers and 20-year-olds to the great R&B songs of the 70s and 80s, I think we probably also exposed people who grew up with those records to hip hop and R&B records of the 2000s and made them realize, oh, wait, I know the words to all of these songs as well.
Yeah.
What it really has done is reminded us, and when I say us, I mean music lovers of all ages, it's reminded us of what our favorite songs are.
Yeah.
Because all of these songs I like to think of as the greatest songs of all time.
Yeah.
I make that statement often. I go, these are the greatest songs of all time.
Yeah.
They are. They are the greatest songs of all time. And they've touched my life. That's why I include the songs I include. I choose the songs based on the songs that hold the most special place in my heart.
Yeah.
Because the songs, to me, they have to be the interaction between me and the record and me and the artist has to be authentic. I never want to have to study the lyrics or figure out where to ad lib an MC. I have to been doing it for years. It has to be in me already.
Yeah.
No rehearsal needed. So these are the greatest songs of all time. I think it's reminded us. What the greatest songs of all time are. It's reminded us what our favorite songs of all time are. And it's reminded younger people, oh, wait, I know the words to every one of these songs. And it's reminded older viewers, wait, I know the words to this Ja Rule and Nelly song also.
Yeah.
And I think it's bridged a lot of gaps. It's built a lot of bridges between people, ages, races, localities. I think it's bridged gaps between genres and eras.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to be the DJ that was unbound by genre and unbound by era.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud that I get to exhibit that on this show, because that's really the foundation of the show. There are no boundaries and we all sing together.
Yeah.
And we all dance together and we all party together and we all celebrate together. If you take home anything from this show, that's what I would love people to take home.
Yeah, and you know, and I think it nothing exudes that more when you did volume 2 with the hip hop, because you brought in artists that a lot of us like, oh man, name, you know, Rakim. Although I didn't really recognize him because you see he was so far back in his throne. Black Sheep and you know,
Eric Sermon,
Eric
Fushnikins, MC Search, MC Light, Arrested Development.
You had LL Cool J rapping as if he needed to rap as fast as he could and hard as he could to earn his meat. I mean, it almost, you know, and that's actually the one that most of my generation from Nigeria were like, look at all the MC stuff. So they pushed past that, and I saw 2, then saw 1, and
you saw volume 2 first.
Yeah, I saw volume 2 first because a lot of my friends who grew up in Nigeria were really big into hip hop, and so they really circulated that, and I was like, wow, this is volume 2. Let's see what 1 was. And then after I saw 1, I think the next week volume 3 was coming out, so I was waiting overnight for volume 3. Now my inspiration for music has always been Teddy Riley. So I've loved the sort of the 90s and late 80s and 90s. And so when you did volume 3, I just felt like, okay, I can rest now because this is it. These are all these records I bought, and these were, you know, it was to me, it was the most personal one for me because, and I think it was the one that really blew up. I don't know if from your point of view, is that the one that you thought sort of took it?
Well, I think it was all a trajectory, but
yeah.
But I knew what 2 and 3 were going to be after 1. I didn't know I was ever going to do a 2 until 1 premiered. Yeah, there was no future. This was a one-off, but I immediately felt overwhelmed by the reaction to 1.
Wow.
You know, 10,000 people watched 1 live. And I went to bed so happy. I couldn't believe 10,000 people had come into this little thing I promoted with no help during a time when so many people were streaming things and there was so much to watch, in addition to, of course, regular TV and Netflix.
Yeah.
The second I saw the reaction the night of volume 1, I could have wrote down exactly what 2 and 3 would be song by song.
Wow.
I knew exactly what it would be. I knew those 2 eras. I knew who I was calling first. I knew how I would sequence it. Everything after developed, but 2 and 3, I knew exactly what, how, and why. You know, those were really the records I grew up on, you know, on 2 and 3. That's really me as a 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old. And, you know, they say the music you listen to as a child, you know, is the music that you hold most dear to your heart. The music you listen to, you know, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade in high school, you know, that's those 2 episodes for me. And, you know, people often ask me, I'm not sure if were you going to ask me what my favorite episode was, or were you going to refrain from that kind of question?
You know what? And the reason why it's important to know that, because someone that can ask me who's my favorite guest, and I know it's hard to pick, but you know, everyone would say yes. El said it's like picking his children when I asked him what his favorite song is, but he had to give me a song. But out of all, you know, you're going to your 9th one now. You know, you've done 8. Well, we haven't seen 9 yet, but what is, which one was it?
What song did El DeBarge tell you?
Stay With Me.
I hate answering this, but I'm going to. Needless to say, and I know this is going to sound like boilerplate disclaimers, they all hold a tremendous place in my heart. And they really all make me emotional. talking about volume 1 a few seconds ago, I didn't tear, but I actually got a little feeling in my heart. It makes me emotional talking about volume 1. There is one episode that's just like, it's just my everything. Wow. That's volume 2.
Wow.
Yeah, hip hop's my first love.
You did say that.
It doesn't matter what I fell in love with after.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. Your first love holds a unique place in your heart that can never be changed.
Yeah.
So everything else after doesn't affect that. It affects everything else, but it doesn't affect your first love.
Yeah.
Hip hop is my first love. It's why I became a DJ.
Wow.
And if I had to say, gun to my head, what artist affected you the most? Those artists on volume 2 made me who I am. Hip hop is why I became a DJ. Hip hop is why I thought like I thought. Hip hop is why I dressed like I dressed. I could explain to you why this cricket sweater is hip hop, why this hat is hip hop. I could explain to you why my jewelry is hip hop. You might not see it at first glance. It might not look like what you think is hip hop. It's all hip hop, and it all comes from hip hop. And my infatuation with every other artist on Pass the Mic comes from hip hop. Having Run DMC and LL Cool J set that off, after having Earth, Wind, and Fire set off volume 1, I mean,
you
could kind of just die a happy person.
But you are right, especially when you think about LL. He did a little post of him staring at the wall, and I remember I Need Love. I mean, as a kid, and I went to, as I was born in England, but I went to high school in Nigeria. So when he came out with I Need Love and I'm Bad, and when Run DMC went out, their music crossed from New York to parts of Africa like Nigeria. And for us, it was like, wow, this is interesting, unique. So to have the legendary GOAT and the founding fathers of Run DMC, it was like, wow, this is unique, because they're not performing like that, as a duo together, but you had them, Grand Puba, you had Rakim, Big Daddy Kane,
Young MC,
yes. I mean, Chop Rock, yeah, I love Chop Rock in Nigeria. He's sort of almost like he's debating when he's speaking and stuff like that. And those of us who love Heavy D would have thought if he was still around, I would hope he would have made the addition. But
Heavy was a friend of mine.
Wow.
Whom I knew through O'Neill McKnight and Andre Harrell and Steve Rifkin, who's my partner on Pass the Mic and an executive producer. And Heavy would surely have been on the show. Wow. I have a few regrets. The Fat Boys should have been on the show before Prince Marky D passed. Houdini should have been on the show. I wanted Biz Markie to be on that show, but he was already not well at that time. But you can't look back; you can only look forward.
Yeah.
Hopefully, there'll be other ways to tribute those artists that we've lost through the past 1.5 to 2 years. But yeah, that show holds a very unique place in my heart. When I called LL, he said to me, "What song would you want me to do?" And I said radio, and he couldn't believe that I said radio. He was so expecting me to say Mama Said Knock You Out or Around the Way Girl, or even Rock the Bells. I think those were the three. He never expected radio. And he said, why? He asked me why. So here's what I told him. I said, I'm celebrating what many people call the golden era of hip hop. And for those who don't use that word, many simply refer to it as the greatest era, like the founding era, the era when hip hop came into its own. People have, all their own ways of describing it, but it's a very special era of not only hip hop, of music that changed the world.
Yeah.
And it was really the era I grew up on, this era of like 83 to 93.
Yeah, yeah.
And I wanted to tell a story, and I wanted the story to be told in a loose chronological manner. And I told him that I'm setting off the show with Sucker MCs. And I said the next piece of that puzzle, in my mind, as a fan. Now, I didn't live it like LL. I didn't live it like Russell. I'm grateful to call them all. I'm grateful to call them all my friends, but I didn't live it. But from my perspective as a fan, the next piece of the puzzle after Sucker MCs has to be LL. It's how hip hop progressed and grew, musically, commercially. And I said, I want you to tell that story. And Mama Said Knock You Out doesn't tell that story. Radio tells that story. And I also want to do things that are unexpected on Pass the Mic. I don't want Run DMC to do Walk This Way or It's Tricky.
Yeah.
You know, when I called DMC, he thought I was going to want Walk This Way or Tricky. And I explained the same thing to him. I said, this isn't about the biggest pop song or the most commercially successful. It's about iconic moments that bring you back to a place and tell a story.
Yeah.
And I was a little kid watching Crush Groove. And I was infatuated by the story of Def Jam. Obviously, Crush Groove is a synonym for Def Jam. It's the Hollywood version. And I was infatuated by the story of Russell Simmons and Rick Rubin and Run DMC and the Beastie Boys and LL Cool J. And the scene in Crush Groove in which LL walks into the room with Run DMC and Andre Harrell is an iconic scene. And I wanted almost to recreate that. He walks in and does that verse. He walks in and goes, my radio, believe me, I like it loud. I'm the man with the box that can rock the crowd. And when he came on the computer with me to do this, and I explained to him what to push and what to press, and I saw that he was wearing this Rock the Bells jacket that wasn't out yet and sunglasses, and he came prepared to remind people why he's referred to as the GOAT.
Yeah.
He really came prepared, and I was really honored, and still am. Talking about it, I get chills. I was really honored that he took it so seriously.
Well, that's what people saw. Yeah.
And when you watch that, he was the first person, including me. I hadn't come into my Pass the Mic own yet. Yeah. He was the first to go in and go out, and he held the boombox. But he's an actor. You can't forget he's an actor, and so he knows how to work even a shitty, laptop, low resolution camera. Yeah. He worked it, and he went in and out and back and he worked it like no one had worked it, including myself. He changed the game on how people, I think, work the camera on the show.
Yeah.
But look, I have, moments like that for everyone. Every artist has given me a moment and a story.
Yeah, I interviewed Pharrell MC and I asked him, well, how come he didn't do Treat Him and stuff? And he said, no, that you said, nope, we don't need your biggest hit, but there's a particular, wanted to honor Andre, because I think Andre had just passed by the time you did it. And, but I've spoken to all the people from Donnell to the guys from Mike and Slim from 112 and Lily from SWV. And I always say, and even your good friend, Bowleg and Lou, and they all talk about how much you exude the passion, that it's not just an act. And I think El DeBarge summed it properly, that you are naturally you just love people, love music, and just love spreading joy. And I think some of us might think, wow, he's just a little too happy. But then that's you. And I think we've come to really appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much. it really makes me emotional to hear that you've spoken to all these artists about me. I knew you had spoken to a few about me. I've seen a few clips, but I have not seen the full episodes of all the shows you just mentioned. And I have to go back now and watch them. In fact, on a side note, I would love those clips because I would love to incorporate them into the reel. I get really emotional when I hear about artists talking about the show, particularly when I'm not around. You know, people say nice things about you when you're around, but it's what people say when you're not listening that really hits home. And to know that you've even brought up my name to these artists is something that feels very surreal to me. And to know that they talked about me with you in a positive light and had fond memories of me and the show is the greatest gift the show could ever give me. Wow. I know that's not the same gift the show gives everyone else, but from a personal perspective, hearing artists talk about this show when I'm not around is the greatest gift I could ever receive. Because then I really know I did something right. If you impress your heroes, that's the greatest gift ever. To impress your heroes, that's something you can only dream about as a kid. So when you tell me El DeBarge talked about me, really? You know, SWV talked about me? You know, Father MC, you know, was a pivotal artist in the Andre Harrell Uptown Records history and remains a very, very important person carrying on the legacy of Uptown. His partner in crime, Jimmy Love, was Andre Harrell's right-hand man, and Father and Jimmy are still very close and work together and do a lot of projects together. And I know Father through the Andre Harrell, Jimmy Love, O'Neal McKnight circle. And it was very important for me to have him on that show that was a celebration in many ways of the New Jack Swing era, the Uptown Records era, the Teddy Riley era, the Andre Harrell era, and Andre had just passed. And, you know, one reason I did want to do the song we did was because there was a line that mentioned Andre Harrell. And it was very important to me. But, you know, these shows are a puzzle. Putting together songs seamlessly in a 30-minute show is a puzzle. Now, you got to remember, prior to BET, I had no time restraints whatsoever. So the shows could be however long I wanted. Now that I do them for BET, the shows are 30 minutes, but commercials take up 10 minutes. So when I deliver a show to BET, the show has to be 19 minutes, 45 seconds, and not one frame longer or shorter.
Wow.
So imagine putting together a DJ mix, but it needing to be exactly a certain amount of time. So putting together songs is a musical puzzle. It's a technical puzzle. So that also has an effect on what songs I choose and where songs go. Obviously, creative is the number one, but there's also technical elements that affect those decisions.
I mean, now that you've done all this stuff with BT and you've got all the big, you know, Jesse and all these people involved, does it feel more, you know, when you did it by yourself, did it seem like it was more work then? Does it feel like it's more work and pressure now?
Well, I think it's more work for television because there are guidelines and there are parameters and there are delivery specs, and you also have to deliver it a certain time in advance. So you have deadlines. The first 3 volumes, I think I was making changes the night before. So it's definitely more work for television. But any way you slice it, all 9 episodes have been a complete labor of love and have locked me in the house. I mean, when I begin, I don't leave the house for at least a month. You know, I don't think I leave the house to go to lunch or go to dinner. I literally go outside to the backyard just to get some sun on my face for 5 minutes, but I really don't leave the house.
Wow. because that's probably explains, because if those of us who follow you on your social media would see you at one point going all places, but then now there seems to be a quiet, there seems to be a complete lockdown and stuff like that. And I guess it's what you're saying.
Yeah,
you're busy working.
Yeah,
and
I don't do many interesting things while I'm shooting past the mic, other than shooting past the mic.
You know, and I'm going to talk about a feature ones, but you this coming weekend you've got the reggae one. It has been strange because a lot of people, you know, and I said I've got an international audience. Oh, when is he going to do a reggae or dancehall and stuff? And he did surprise us that you're doing a complete one. How did that sort of idea come to mind, that you thought, okay, you know what? I know that internationally reggae and dancehall is big, maybe not as big in the US, but I'm going to go with a leap of faith here.
Well, I've always envisioned the reggae episode from the very beginning. I told you that volume 2 and 3, I knew right away.
Yeah.
But I also had ideas for all other themes, categories, eras. I knew very early on, I don't know if it was before 2 and 3 or right after, but I knew very early on, certainly by the time 3 was done, that I wanted to do a reggae edition.
Wow.
I don't look at reggae as global music or international music. I think it's as important and as relevant and significant in the US as any other kind of music that has affected my life.
Yeah.
You know, again, there is something very personal about this show. So all the artists and songs have affected me personally.
Yeah.
I've been playing dancehall records since I started playing hip hop records.
Wow.
I mean, I remember listening to Supercat Don Dada on repeat. That album was in my boombox the same way Naughty by Nature, A Tribe Called Quest was. You know, growing up in New York City in the 90s, listening to Funk Master Flex on Hot 97, you heard dancehall records every time he played.
Wow.
But of course, reggae expands way beyond dancehall. And I celebrate all areas of reggae music on this show.
Wow.
This show spans the longest amount of time that any show has spanned. There are records on this show spanning 4 decades, and that is a first for Past the Mic.
Wow.
I feature 21 individuals, 21 iconic individuals on this show, and I feature 16 iconic songs. That's the most number of songs that have ever been on a television episode, excluding the first 3.
Okay.
I wanted the pace to be rapid fire. You know, it's part of reggae culture, and it's part of DJ culture to play reggae songs very fast, to keep them moving real fast. It's very similar in hip hop, but even more so.
Yeah.
In reggae, particularly dancehall, and I wanted the show to feel like that.
Wow.
And you know, back in June, I had Sean Paul and Beanie Man and Wayne Wonder on the show, and the reaction was over the top. People loved those 3 segments. They were really highlights, not only of the show, of the series, and that was like that was the cherry on the cake. Yeah, that was confirmation. I knew we had to do it. So, you know, I don't so much as see it as global and international as I do see it as mainstream popular music. Every song on this edition of Past the Mic that airs on Saturday was a massive hit record.
Okay.
I think there's like half a dozen Billboard pop #1s on this show.
Wow.
Not reggae charts, not hip hop charts, pop #1s. I think there's like half a dozen. You know, like you will be hard pressed to find a person that doesn't know every song on this show. I mean, these songs are enormous.
Yeah.
So to me, it's just another theme to celebrate. It's another era. But every song is just as iconic and prolific as every other song on every episode.
I mean, and we're definitely going to look forward to that. I mean, as I said, coming now, living in the UK, so you know, and I know you're going to surprise us with guests, but people like Maxi Priest and Mr. Vegas and Shabba Ranks, and you know, even members of the Marley family, and you know, Supercat, and all these people that that we all know in even Nigeria and the UK because of the Commonwealth of Jamaica and the West Indies. But I know when I moved to the US, certain songs were big, but not as well known as say in here. So it'd be great to see that. And as you said, the fast pace would mean that before we can even settle with one, we're going to be able to jump to the next one and really give the reggae its due promotion, because it's really held it down for popular music for a long time and stuff. So this is going to be really great, especially for reggae fans and black music fans and music fans.
And I'm so happy you brought up Maxi Priest. He was born in England, correct?
Yeah,
I think he was born in London. And so he represents unique things, you know, he represents a reggae artist who was born in England. He's not the only one. Obviously, we know that reggae music has a enormous following and stake in the culture in the UK.
Yeah.
And Maxi also represents a fusion of reggae and R&B music.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to represent that on the show because, you know, Pass the Mic is all about fusion. It's all about connection. It's all about bridge building. This show, I passed the mic to artists in 4 countries, which I also think is a first. It's the most number of countries we've passed the mic to, so to speak, on one show.
Okay, because I know the last time in Free, apart from going to Hakeem in Syria, I don't think you went outside the US in Free, but this would be interesting going to so we're not going to know which countries.
You won't know in advance, although we know England and Jamaica are 2 of them.
Okay.
So, you know, I haven't told anyone yet, but I'm going to Jamaica to watch the show. We're having a viewing party in Kingston, and it's going to be a fun weekend. So the dead zone you've seen on Instagram is about to end.
Oh, goodness gracious. You know, a Nigerian background. Would you ever consider an Afrobeat one? Because it's now becoming a big, you know, you've got
100%.
Okay.
100%. You know, the sky's the limit.
Okay.
The sky has always been the limit. So, you know, I've been asked many times, do you have enough ideas to keep going? And, you know, I said, there's many things I have in store for Pass the Mic, but if I continue to do television shows in the format I have, there will be no shortage of ideas. That's for sure.
And finally, just the because I saw the Pegasus, so the event that you did. So
yes, Pegasus World Cup.
Pegasus World Cup, and so are we going to expect to see Pass the Mic as a concept going more so, because that in itself just felt like they felt like this could be great, getting some of our favorite artists on a bill and touring the country.
100% yes. For those listening who are unaware, I debuted Pass the Mic Live, a certain kind of tease, a prototype for the future to foreshadow what's to come. The Pegasus World Cup is like the Kentucky Derby. It's the biggest horse race of the year in America. It takes place annually in Miami. Thousands of people attend, and there's always a big concert at the end. 2 years ago, Post Malone headlined. The year before, Snoop Dogg. The year before, Nelly. So this year, they called me and asked me if DJ Cassidy's Pass the Mic could be the main event. And I surprised guests with Ja Rule, Little Kim, and Mace. And then Little Kim surprised us all with Jadakiss and Little C's. And then I brought out El DeBarge, who we've mentioned many times, and he closed the entire show with Rhythm of the Night.
Yeah.
And all the hip hop stars came on stage with him, and it was magical. And the presentation of the show, the production of the show, was exactly what I had always envisioned. It really was the real life manifestation of the television series.
Are you busier now than you've ever been?
I believe so. I believe every year of my career has grown. But obviously the past year has grown tremendously. I never thought that I'd be the creator, producer, and star of a television show. I certainly would never have imagined that a year and a half ago. And now I'm planning to take that on the road as well. So there's a lot of new, exciting things happening in addition to all the things I was known for doing before. So yes, it's a very, very busy and exciting time. And, you know, I'm really happy that we finally got to speak. And I'm almost happy we didn't do this at the beginning. You know, I know you had reached out at the beginning and the schedules weren't aligned at first. I'm really happy we waited because you really are a student of the show. I can tell you love the show. And I'm so grateful for that. And it's so nice and such an honor to speak to someone who really knows the ins and outs. Even the fact that you knew that I shot Hakeem from The Boys in Africa for Volume 3, and the pajamas and, you know, every little detail, Father MC. And, you know, these details really, I don't want to say impress me, but they make me emotional that you know, that you're that aware of the ins and outs of the show. So I'm really happy we waited. And we're going to have to do it again, either before the June show or maybe after the June show to culminate the 10.
Yeah, please do. I can't end without saying, so I interviewed Gina Thompson a couple of weeks ago, and, you know, and she told us her emotional story about her records, her albums being shelved. And then I said, how was it like doing Pass the Mic? And to her, it almost felt like somebody had just picked her up from nowhere and just said, I'm going to make you shine, despite all that has happened. And she said it was the most satisfying and rewarding thing that she had her kids watching her. And it's like, oh, mommy actually was a star kind of thing. So just to say thank you on her behalf for what you did. And it's given her that confidence that I'm going to go back out again. I'm going to try and resurrect my career, which was sadly curtailed. So it was the fact that you reached out to her, it's something that really has touched somebody like her and many of us. So I really appreciate things like that.
Well, that really, I don't even know what to say. That touches me in so many ways. Again, to have some kind of effect on the artists who affected me. I remember playing Gina and Missy's record, The Things You Do, at some of my early parties in 9th and 10th grade. And that record rocked. You know, it was the first record that Missy Elliott ever rapped on.
Yeah.
And it was a remix produced by Puffy. Exactly. It was her famous yeah. And, you know, I called Mona Scott, who has managed Missy Elliott, I believe, her whole career. And I asked Mona if she knew Pass the Mic, and she did. And I told her about the show that I was in the middle of producing. And I said, I want Missy on the show. And she told me right away that Missy was a fan of the show. Missy actually had posted Volume 2 unsolicitedly.
Wow.
So I knew Missy knew of the show. And then I said to Mona, okay, is you ready for my idea? You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. I don't want Missy to do I Can't Stand the Rain. She said, okay, you wanted to do Work It? I said, no. I said, that's a different era than this era. Missy spans many eras. I said, I want to do something really unexpected with Missy. I don't want her to do the song everyone would expect. I want her to do the first verse she ever did. I want her to do The Things You Do with Gina Thompson. And Mona said, have you found Gina Thompson? And I said, I haven't tried yet. And she said, well, if you can get a hold of Gina and she's down, then we're down. And I spent the next 7 days putting out word that I was looking for Gina Thompson. And Gina didn't have an Instagram.
Yeah.
And we also couldn't find her on Facebook. And it was Bow-Legged Lou of Full Force.
Well, you both, the resources talent scout,
who has been my partner in crime. He was my unofficial talent scout before he became my official talent scout, along with the legendary DJ Chill Will of Dougie Fresh's Get Fresh crew. Chill Will and Bow-Legged Lou really became my official co-talent coordinators. And I believe that Lou put out a message on his Facebook, is anyone in touch with Gina Thompson? And I got in touch with her, and she was just the sweetest person. And I told her this idea, and she said to me, have you reached out to Missy? They both asked me the same question.
Oh, goodness.
And of course they both said yes. And that's, you know, I'd say if we speak again in June and you ask me for my top 10 moments, this will, certainly be on my top 10 moments. I later found out that Missy and Gina hadn't spoken really since they recorded the record. I mean, I think they might have they shot a video and they performed it a couple times, but they basically hadn't spoken since 1996. And after I told everyone that I had spoken to everyone, we were confirmed, I gave Gina's number to Missy.
Yeah, Gina said so, yeah.
And I later found out that Missy called Gina and they spoke for 2 hours on the phone. And that just warmed my heart. So it's stories like you just told me that really are the fuse of my fire. You know, they are what inspires me. These moments in which I feel like I might have inspired my heroes.
Yeah.
Those are the greatest moments. So, I'm so happy that you told me these stories, particularly that one.
Yeah. Well, and there'll be hundreds, but when you do your 10th, fans of people who lost their families over the pandemic were posting how much watching, and especially Volume 3, lifted them up from one lady her mom had just passed away. And then 2 days later, she was watching Volume 3 and was able to say, as much as I miss my mom, watching this has really lifted my spirit. And it was the most popular comment on the thread. And so it has really touched a lot of people globally. I think over 100 million people would have watched an episode. And so we appreciate you. And as I said, we will celebrate you on when you come out with season 10, and then probably hear about what's coming to what we can expect as fans on the live show, because that would live tour, and hopefully behind the scenes, because I know I saw a snippet of it a couple of months ago where you were telling Big Daddy Kane, okay, you plug it in for the side. So hopefully we'll get a behind the scenes making of how you did 1 to 3 and stuff. Will we ever see something like that?
100%. Right now I have a 10-minute kind of sizzle reel that tells the journey, and it tells it in quite an emotional way. But I think I'm going to wait until the summer to put that out, because I want the next 2 episodes to be a part of it.
Okay.
And then after the first 10 episodes, we'll see where we are. And I'm excited for everyone to see those moments, because honestly, the behind the scenes moments are even more emotional than the moments you get to see. But before we go, I want to thank you. I've watched many of your shows. I have not watched all. I would like to catch up and see them all. Some of the moments that you've told me about on this show today, I've seen, but I haven't seen many of those, and I would like to as well. You've done an incredible thing. You were also inspired to get in front of the camera and the microphone during the pandemic. And you've been interviewing so many R&B greats, some of which who have received the credit they deserve, and many of which who have not received the credit they deserve. And you too have shined an incredible light on amazing musicians, some unsung, some who have been heralded, and some who have not. And you've done an incredible thing. And it's a testament to your show that so many artists have taken part. I know what it's like to call people and ask them to take part in something that's not on television and explain to them who I am and what I want them to do and why they should do it and who's done it. And those first 10 are always the hardest. And the fact that you're speaking to people like El DeBarge on this show is a testament to what you've created. And it allows me to continue to do what I do, because without platforms like yours that talk about it and that show highlights and review it, then what's my show? My show really is only as good as much as people watch it and talk about it afterwards and love it. And you give, an incredible platform to R&B music in particular. So thank you for doing what you do.
Cassidy, it's been, as I said, a great honor having you today. And I really appreciate what you've said. And I interviewed Father MC and Timmy Gatlin back and Don Robinson, but only a handful of people were watching. And when Pastor Mike 3 came out and I was able to put it on my channel, overnight my channel went from, I think, 200 subscribers to almost 10,000. And it was because people were watching that. And all of a sudden I started to realize, well, let me start interviewing the people more featured on that. So my success has come from piggybacking off what you've created. So I will always be grateful for what you keep doing and things. And as I said, I appreciate even the fact that in your busy time, especially even today, you did allocate time for me to hear your story and your journey. And I appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much. It was great talking to you. And I can tell you're a therapist because you have a very soothing way about you, and you're a very good listener. And, I do a lot of interviews, and to do one with someone who listens and reacts and who's informed and a fan of what you do is amazing. So I appreciate you. Let's make sure to do this again.
Yeah.
Either before the June show or maybe even after, to talk about everything.
Okay. Definitely. I would wait. I will hit you up to say, okay, when's a good time? And as you generously gave me time today, I'll be available and waiting.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of Halftime Chat. Please remember to subscribe, share, and comment. But most importantly, why don't you become a member of Halftime Chat? We've got amazing videos, amazing perks, and being able to support the channel. But anyway, thanks for watching. Take care.
I never participated in that category.
And somewhere in between us, or even loving us, on which I didn't miss you with.
What was it like growing up?
She's still making an impact on 4 houses down.
I have a couple pieces.
Trying to get this one and that one.
That works for you, but just for me,
No, okay, you're okay.
They don't understand what Jonas Boys and men and all spirits.
Lay it.